Now to the latest in the polls. An NDP surge is eating away at Liberal and Conservative support, and Jagmeet Singh is gaining ground as the preferred Prime Minister. The latest Nanos poll shows the Liberals and Conservatives in a virtual deadlock, with the NDP just rebounding there to 18%. The Greens behind them, and the Bloc and the People's Party following behind them there, as you see on your screen. Now, when it comes to the choice for preferred Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau is still on top. Scheer is next with 25% support. Jagmeet Singh at about 16% support for preferred Prime Minister, followed by Elizabeth May and also Yves-Francois Blanchet and Maxime Bernier. Now let's bring in Michael Geoghegan. He is a political analyst who joins us now from Victoria this morning. Michael, good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
So, Michael, just 9 days left before Election Day. So pretty close tie between the Conservatives and the Liberals in that poll we just read out. What story does that tell you?
I think it tells a story that Canadians, even as we're getting closer and closer to Election Day, are largely undecided. There's no clear consensus in terms of the two frontrunners. Canadians are undecided, and I think they have serious misgivings about all the federal party leaders, and I think that's showing up in the still relatively high undecided factor and the fact that the Liberals and Conservatives have been going back and forth, neck and neck throughout this election. Of course, the NDP surge, that's more helping the Conservatives than the Liberals, and some people are saying, hey, maybe a minority government is a good thing. So all the leaders are having to campaign hard.
Okay, now I did want to take a closer look at the platforms that came out on Friday. The Conservatives and the NDP finally releasing their platforms. The Conservatives' plan specifically is to spend $49 billion on tax cuts and several tax credits, but balancing the books also at the same time in 5 years by raising $69 billion in revenue by cutting things like infrastructure spending, foreign aid, and corporate subsidies. So I want to ask you, do Canadians have the appetite for the cuts that the Conservatives are proposing here?
Well, I don't think Canadians mind cutting corporate subsidies, but however, when it comes to infrastructure spending, Canada already has a sizable infrastructure deficit. It's not of the magnitude of the United States, but I think most Canadians recognize that when you start cutting infrastructure, sooner or later that has to be made up. And in terms of all the parties, all their spending and deficit projections, there's growing indicators that we are heading towards a recession. So that's going to throw all those numbers out the window anyway. So I think the big problem that Scheer has is that the Ford cuts in Ontario have really hurt the Conservative brand in that province. Mm-hmm. That's why I think that's robbed him of a clear majority. Just as with Trudeau, his missteps, the SNC-Lavalin scandal, etc., it's robbed him of an ability to have a clear majority heading towards Election Day. So they're both struggling.
Okay, now with the NDP, as we mentioned, they're having a bit of a surge, gaining support where the Conservatives and the Liberals seem to be losing it a bit. Their platform puts Canada in a $33 billion deficit in the first year. No plan to pay it off, but the plan is to have universal pharmacare, affordable housing, efforts to tackle climate change. On the other side, they will be taxing the super rich and raising the corporate tax rate. So will that resonate with what Canadians want right now?
Well, again, Canadians tend to be a bit more fiscally responsible than our American cousins. So I think they'll have some misgivings on that part. But in terms of dental coverage, I mean, we're the only nation where we provide universal health care with the exception of dental care. Every other country that provides universal health care includes dental care. Most other countries have some kind of pharmacare program. So certainly what they're advocating is very in keeping with what other, Western European and other nations have done. So, and they've also, in terms of their platform, they've really taken some pages out of, the Bernie Sanders campaign in the South. But that having been said, I think what the more likely scenario is the best case scenario for the NDP is holding the balance of power, and then they can broker to see what, if any, of these programs they could get implemented.
Mm-hmm. Now, the phrase balance of power, that's also being used for the Bloc Québécois, that separatist party, really seeing a resurgence, of course, as we've seen in the past few days. But what is resonating about that party with voters?
I think there's a couple of things going on. One is that some Quebecers hate the idea of of a pipeline going across Quebec, and the BQ has certainly picked up some votes because of that. In reaction to the Conservative platform. On the other hand, I think it also reflects the fact that, as in the rest of Canada, there's a really high undecided, unsure, I'm not sure if I trust any of these folks kind of mentality. And I think for a lot of people in Quebec, they're parking their vote with the BQ and saying, yeah, why not have the BQ have the balance of power? Now, that's not a very appetizing prospect for the rest of Canada, but it certainly makes sense within the context of Quebec.
All right, Michael Geoghegan, we have to leave it there, but thank you so much for your time today and for your insights.
Oh, you're welcome.